They laughed at Cordelia Brine's hands before the royal tide bells finished ringing. Moonbrine Harbor Court stood open to the sea, its floors made of pale blue stone that caught the morning light and threw it back like water. Beyond the marble arches, royal ships rocked beneath dragon-carved masts, their sails folded, their trade banners still wet with mist. Cordelia stood barefoot beside the old washing basin at the court's edge. Her hands were split white from salt. Not delicate cracks, not pretty marks a court painter could turn into tragedy. Deep work, cracks crossed her knuckles and palms, hardened from years of lifting brine nets, grinding tide salt, scrubbing channel stones, and stirring the harbor bowls before dawn, while better-dressed people slept under warm roofs and praised clean sea roads as if they kept themselves open. No one praised salt workers. They praised dragons. They praised kings. They praised ships that came home. But no ship came home without someone keeping the sea from turning bitter beneath it. Harbor Duke Cenric Vael lifted Cordelia's hand with two gloved fingers, as if touching her skin might stain him. "Look closely, Majesty," he said. "This is the woman who claims she can read tide sickness better than the harbor office. Her hands are so corrupted by salt rot she cannot even keep herself clean." A ripple of laughter moved through the court. Cordelia did not pull away. That would have looked like shame. She had spent too many years with men mistaking work for shame. Dragon King Vaelen Orm sat beneath the shell-white throne canopy, black hair tied back with a silver sea clasp, his sea-green eyes fixed on her hand. He wore the dark blue robes of the Tide Crown, embroidered with silver dragons along the sleeves. He looked carved from storm and command. Once, he had come to the lower salt steps alone after a night of failed trade winds. Cordelia had found him there, crownless, with sea spray in his hair and blood on his cuff from a dragon mooring line. She had washed the cut without asking why a king bled where no healer stood. He had watched her hands then and said, quietly, "They know the sea better than my council does." Now he let his duke hold those same hands up as proof of dirt. Cordelia looked at Vaelen. "Does the court require my hands?" she asked, "or only their humiliation?" Cenric released her with a sorrowful smile. "No one humiliates you, Mistress Brine. We question your fitness." "My fitness to do work your office used for 20 years? To approach royal harbor water," Cenric corrected. "Your salt rites are unlicensed. Your basin washings are unsupervised. And now 3 sea dragon convoys refuse the southern channel after your warnings spread fear among dock crews. Every refusal sent ships through the Duke's licensed Northwater route, where inspection fees doubled after dusk." Cordelia glanced toward the harbor. The southern channel lay quiet beyond the white towers, too quiet. No dragon fins broke the water. No silver backs turned beneath the tide. The sea there had begun to smell wrong 2 months ago, sweet under the salt, like flowers left to rot in a locked room. She had written that in her tide notes. Cenric had called it superstition. Vaelen's voice carried from the throne. "The harbor reports show no poison." Cordelia faced him fully. "The harbor reports were written from balconies." Cenric sighed, and hers were written from washing tubs. "They were written with salt under my nails and tide mud on my knees," she said. "That is closer to the water than any balcony." A few dockhands lowered their eyes. Vaelen's jaw tightened. "Cenric says your rituals delayed ships. Cenric's channel permits sent them through sick tide. His reports are sealed. My hands are not." The words landed harder than she expected. Vaelen looked at her hands again. For one dangerous breath, memory moved between them. His wounded wrist in her basin, the way he had almost touched her palm afterward, as if wanting to wash the salt from her skin. She had pulled away then too. Not because she did not want his gentleness, because she feared any man who mistook softening a woman for honoring her. Cenric stepped into that silence. "Majesty, this is the concern." She speaks as though labor gives her authority over crown navigation. Cordelia looked at the court. Labor gave this harbor its morning. The laughter stopped. Cenric's eyes cooled. A poetic answer, not a lawful one. He turned to Vaelen and presented a polished ledger bound in sharkskin. "Royal harbor accounts show clear tide channels, steady salt levels, and no contamination. Mistress Brine's unauthorized warnings have damaged dragon trade confidence. I request her basin be removed from court practice and her access to royal channels suspended." Cordelia felt the words before she understood how far they reached. No basin, no channel steps, no dawn salt rites, No right to touch the water she had kept alive. Vaelen stood. The court quieted under the weight of him. "Cordelia Brine," he said, "until the Harbor Council completes inquiry, your access to royal tide channels is suspended." Something inside her went still. Not broken. Emptied. "You will close the sea to the person who told you it was sick?" "I will contain panic." "No," she said softly. "You will polish it." Senric's expression sharpened. "Majesty, if she refuses, the basin must be seized." Vaelen descended the throne steps and stopped before Cordelia. His gaze dropped once to her cracked palms. "I do not want this done harshly." She laughed once, low and tired. Men always say that before making someone else carry the harshness. He reached toward the sea dragon basin. Cordelia placed both salt-cracked hands on its rim first. The water had been still all morning. The basin did not judge women. It did not know shame, labor, or law. It answered only the salt carried into it and the sickness hidden inside that salt. The water moved. Not in ripples, in breath. The court fell silent. The basin water rose beneath her fingers, twisting upward in a thin, clear coil. Salt crystals lifted from the stone floor and flashed like stars. The coil thickened, shaped itself, opened two luminous blue eyes, and became the head of a sea dragon no longer than Cordelia's forearm. Vaelen froze. Senric did not move. The little dragon turned its wet, shining head toward the royal harbor. Then it recoiled. A sound came from its throat, small and ancient, like a tide refusing a poisoned shore. Cordelia looked at Vaelen over the basin. "You should ask why it will touch my hands," she said, "but not your harbor." It had not cleared her. It had only refused the water the court had called clean. Vaelen had seen the basin answer Cordelia's hands. He had not yet returned them to the water. The small sea dragon hovered above the basin rim, no bigger than a storm lantern, its clear body threaded with blue light and salt. It kept its narrow head turned away from the royal harbor, as if the clean white docks carried a smell only ancient things could bear to notice. Senric Vael recovered first. "A reaction is not testimony," he said. The court breathed again because he had given them a lawful sentence to hide behind. Senric stepped away from the basin, his gloved hands folded. Mistress Brine's rites are unlicensed. Her hands carry salt rot. Her basin is unsupervised. If anything, Majesty, the disturbance proves why crown water should not be exposed to private ritual contamination. Cordelia looked at him. "My hands did not poison your harbor. They carried the part your reports refused to touch." Senric softened his voice. "Fear spreads faster than poison. 3 convoys refused the southern channel after her warnings. The harbor office rerouted trade through North Water to prevent economic collapse. The fees there are lawful emergency costs. Doubled after dusk," Cordelia said. "Night inspection requires dragon lantern crews." Convenient lanterns. Vaelen's gaze moved between them. He did not apologize. He did not defend her. His face remained hard, but the hardness had changed. It no longer pointed, only at Cordelia. "Preserve the basin water," he ordered. "Witness seals. No one touches it alone." Senric inclined his head. "Wise, Majesty." "Open a repeatable tide test," Vaelen continued. "Balcony sample, Basin level sample, channel mud, and residue from the dragon mooring line." Cordelia's fingers tightened on the basin rim. Senric's eyes narrowed. "With respect, Majesty, allowing her to handle the samples risks invalidating them. She will not handle them as owner of the basin," Vaelen said. Cordelia looked at him. He looked back, as temporary tide witness. The words did not warm her. They were not restoration. They were not trust. They were a narrow, legal shelf placed beneath her feet after he had helped push her toward the water. "Do not call me witness," she said, "while my basin is treated as evidence against me." A flicker crossed Vaelen's face. Pain, perhaps, or recognition arriving too late to be useful. "You remain suspended from royal channel access," he said. "But your knowledge of Basin-level tide will be recorded." He had recorded her knowledge. He had not returned the water it came from. Cordelia laughed softly. A king can order a test and still leave the woman who warned him under shame. The little sea dragon lowered its head until its bright eyes faced Vaelen. It did not speak. It only watched. The first sample came from the court balcony cistern, drawn by a crown-certified harbor reader in a silver cup. The water looked flawless, pale and clear, smelling only of clean salt and morning air. Senrik spread one hand. This is the water used in the official reports. Cordelia nodded. Of course it is. Vaelen turned. Meaning? Balconies read surfaces, she said. Salt workers read what the tide drags underneath. The balcony sample entered a marked glass bowl beside the sea dragon basin. The small dragon did not recoil. The basin water stayed nearly still, touched only by a faint silver tremor. Senrik's mouth relaxed. Clean, as reported. No, Cordelia said. Clean where you chose to look. The second sample came from below the basin steps, drawn by a dock boy with a weighted shell cup Cordelia described but did not touch. He lowered it beneath the surface current, waited until the line pulled left, then sealed it underwater as she instructed. When the cup opened, the smell reached the court. Sweet rot beneath salt. Not strong, worse because it tried to seem faint. The sea dragon snapped its head toward the cup and recoiled. Its clear body darkened around the gills. The basin water shivered once. The healer leaned in. Record. Lower. Current sample carries visible grey bloom threads. Senrik's voice stayed controlled. Warm season bloom. Natural. Temporary. It gathers beneath still surfaces and clears with tide change. Cordelia looked at him. The southern channel has had moving tide every dawn for 2 months. Your notes claim that. My knees claim it too. They were on the stones while your readers held cups from balconies. Vaelen did not look away from the lower current sample. Channel mud. A mud jar came next from the southern mooring shelf. It looked harmless, until the alchemist stirred it with a bone rod. Dark threads lifted through the silt like hair in water. The little dragon opened its mouth in a silent hiss. Senrik raised his chin. Mud holds old rot. It does not prove present poison. Then test the mooring line, Cordelia said. The dragon mooring rope was brought under guard. Sea dragons brush those lines when entering Royal Harbor, their gills passing near the braided salt fibers. Cordelia watched the healer scrape pale residue from one knot. The residue touched the lower current water. Blue light flared in the sea dragon's throat, then guttered hard. The alchemist went still. Gill, reactive bloom. The court murmured. Senrik turned sharply. Preliminary. Yes, Vaelen said. Preliminary. Cordelia hated that he was right. She hated more that he had learned caution only after using certainty against her. Vaelen faced the court. Record narrowly. Balcony water appears clean. Lower, current sample, channel mud, and mooring residue show reactive bloom requiring further proof. Cordelia Brine remains temporary tide witness. Her royal channel access remains suspended pending inquiry. Senrik bowed. A balanced order. Cordelia looked at Vaelen. You praised my hands when they served you unseen. You doubted them when they contradicted your duke. His hand shifted, almost rising toward hers. She saw it. So did he. He stopped himself. Do not touch what you let them laugh at, she said. His fingers closed at his side. The recorder brought Senrik's sealed harbor report for comparison. Its sharkskin cover shone, polished and official. Vaelen broke the witness ribbon himself. Read the southern channel entry, he ordered. The recorder read the first paragraph. Tide level stable. Surface salt within range. No poison detected. Then he paused. Cordelia's eyes narrowed. Where is the lower current warning? The recorder turned one page, then another. Senrik's expression did not change. The recorder swallowed. There was an attached copy of Mistress Brine's tide notes. Cordelia stepped closer. Her handwriting sat there beneath the seal. But the paragraph about sweet rot, gill distress, and lower current bloom had been cut away. The cut did not name Senrik's hand. It only proved the court had used Cordelia's notes after removing the part that mattered. The cut did not name Senrik's hand. It only proved the court had used Cordelia's notes after removing the part that mattered. That was enough to make Moonbrine Harbor court colder than the sea wind. The sealed report lay open beneath Vaelen Orm's hand, Cordelia's handwriting still visible around the absence. A clean-edged gap cut through the page where her warning should have been. Sweet rot. Gill distress. Lower current bloom. Not gone from her memory. Gone from the version that had reached the throne. Senrik Vael looked at the missing paragraph as if he was studying a clerk's inconvenience. Official reports are summaries, Majesty. Not every field observation belongs inside a sealed harbor conclusion. Cordelia turned to him slowly. Do not call it summary, when the missing sentence is the only one that could have saved the channel. A murmur moved through the dockhands. Senric did not raise his voice. That was why people trusted him. At the time, her lower current method was not Crown certified. Harbor clerks remove speculative observations before presentation. That is procedure, not falsification. Vaelen's eyes remained on the cut page. Seal the report. A recorder stepped forward with wax. And bring the custody log, Vaelen said. The original station notes, any draft copies, any clerk margin sheets used before the sealed report. Cordelia looked at him. He had opened the report. He had not opened the water. He had learned to read what was cut away. He had not yet restored the woman who had written it whole. Her royal channel access remained suspended. Her basin remained under witness seal. Her hands, the ones the court had laughed at, still had no right to touch the tide steps she knew better than any crowned reader alive. Vaelen glanced toward her, as if he felt that distance. He did not cross it. Good. The custody log arrived first, wrapped in oilcloth. It listed the movement of Cordelia's station notes from the lower salt steps to the harbor office archive. 3 clerks had copied them. 1 senior reviewer had marked them for sealed report entry. Senric's name did not appear. Senric folded his gloved hands. As you see, Majesty, ordinary clerical chain. Cordelia leaned over the log without touching it. Who ordered my notes taken? The recorder followed the column. Harbor office request. Routine collection after convoy refusal. After which refusal? The first Southern Channel refusal. Cordelia lifted her eyes. Before I warned the docks publicly. The recorder stopped. Vaelen looked at him. Confirm. The man swallowed. Yes, Majesty. The collection order predates Mistress Brine's public warning by 2 days. Cordelia faced Senric. Trade did not flee because I warned them. They warned themselves before your report admitted why. Senric answered with the same careful grief he used when stealing blame from air. Convoy captains are superstitious. A delayed fin turn becomes a sickness rumor by nightfall. That does not mean poison existed. The sea does not care which report wore a seal, Cordelia said. The original station book was brought from the lower salt office. Or what remained of it. Cordelia knew the cover at once. Grey leather, salt, stiff, tied with blue cord she had knotted herself. But when the recorder opened the week of the first refusal, 3 pages were missing. Cordelia did not reach for it. Her hands stayed at her sides. My station copy had those pages. Senric's brows lifted. Salt offices are damp. Pages loosen. They loosen in order? She asked. Only the week my warning mattered? Vaelen's voice cut in. Record missing pages. Same week as sealed report alteration. Majesty, Senric said. That language implies alteration before the chain proves it. Then record it narrowly, Vaelen said. Station pages missing. Sealed copy cut. Custody under inquiry. Cordelia hated that she respected the restraint. She hated that restraint had not been there when he suspended her. A draft margin sheet came next. The recorder unfolded it carefully. There, in a clerk's narrow hand, Cordelia's missing warning appeared as a side note. Lower current bloom observed. Sweet rot present. Gill distress reported near southern mooring. On the final sealed report, it disappeared. Cordelia's voice went low. You did not ignore my warning. You kept my handwriting and removed my warning from it. Vaelen's jaw tightened. Senric looked at the margin. Draft margins are not conclusions. Clerks preserve excess material before senior review. Who performed the senior review? Vaelen asked. The recorder checked the custody line. Harbor Duke's office. Senric did not flinch. My office reviews all harbor summaries. That does not mean I personally removed unverified claims. No confession. No collapse. Only another clean door closing before anyone reached him. Vaelen turned the inquiry toward money. Northwater route fee records. Senric's gaze sharpened by a fraction. Majesty, route fees are irrelevant to biological tide conditions. They may be relevant to who benefited when the Southern Channel was called clean while ships avoided it. The records came under ledger seal. Each Sea Dragon convoy refusal had been followed by an emergency reroute through Northwater. Each Northwater inspection fee doubled after dusk. Each fee increase had been approved as temporary safety burden. The pattern was ugly. Not complete. Ugly. Senric spoke before the court could make more of it. Emergency rerouting is expensive. Dragon Lantern crews, late tide pilots, extra hull readers, those costs are real. Cordelia looked at him. So were the burns in their gills. Vaelen turned to the convoy logs. The first captain's official entry mentioned hesitation near the southern channel. The second listed fin drag. The third recorded shallow breathing before the public warning. The healer leaned closer. Gill distress predates Mistress Brine's warning. Senric's voice stayed calm. Those entries may have been backfilled after rumor spread. Captains protect themselves from trade penalties. Vaelen, order, privé de logs. The court shifted. Private captain logs were not written for kings. They were written for survival. The first confirmed fin drag. The second mentioned sweet undercurrent. The third carried a sealed notation from Captain Thale. The recorder read it, then stopped. Vaelen's voice lowered. Read. The recorder obeyed. Harbour Duke Senric Vael ordered the southern channel kept officially clean until Northwater contracts renewed. A private log was not a crown verdict. It was a door Senric had not expected anyone to open. The log did not convict Senric by itself. It only proved a captain had written the order before the court admitted the water was sick. That was enough to make Senric Vael request procedure. Private captain logs are defensive records, he said. Captains write them to protect themselves from penalties when cargo slows, beasts refuse, or crews panic. We cannot build crown judgment on one man's self-protection. Vaelen Orm did not argue. He sealed the log instead. Verify ink, date, custody, and witness mark, he ordered. Summon Captain Thale. If he cannot leave his ship, bring his log chest under guard. Cordelia stood beside the evidence table, not beside the basin. The sea dragon basin remained under witness seal at the court's edge, its small water-formed dragon coiled low and silent inside the bowl. No one asked it to prove anything more. Good. Ancient water had opened the door. Now men's records had to walk through it. A horn sounded from the southern pier. Every head turned. A harbor runner entered breathless, rain streaking his face. Majesty, the Dawn Merrow convoy refuses the southern mouth. One sea dragon scraped its gills against the outer mooring and turned back. Senric's face tightened with public concern. Then panic continues to spread. Cordelia looked at him. Gills, do not read rumors. Vaelen's eyes moved to her. She did not soften. Captain Meron's log chest arrived before the man did. Its brass corners were dented, its salt seals intact. The court notary broke them under witness. The inkmaster tested the private entry against the dated pages before and after it. Same hand, the inkmaster said. Same night ink. No later washing. Date? Vaelen asked. 2 days before Mistress Brine's public warning. 1 day before the final sealed harbor report. Senric folded his hands. Then the captain recorded his interpretation before legal contamination was established. Officially clean may mean not yet declared contaminated by Crown standard. Cordelia turned to him. Officially clean is not the same as safe. The words moved through the court more sharply than the sea wind. Vaelen looked at the sealed report. Northwater contract renewal records. Senric's voice stayed even. Those negotiations began before the refusals. Then the dates will help you. The contract ledgers came from the harbor treasury, bound in green hide and carried by 2 clerks who looked less afraid of dragons than of Senric's office. The first renewal draft predated the refusals. Senric inclined his head, almost gently. As I said, the second amendment came after the first refusal, the third after the second, the final exclusivity clause after the third. Vaelen's jaw tightened. Read the fee schedule. The treasurer cleared his throat. Northwater night inspection fee doubled under emergency routing. Dragon Lantern expense charged at full crew rate. Actual expense? Vaelen asked. A second ledger opened. The numbers did not match. Lantern crews had been paid half. Hull readers had been charged for 6 men and staffed by 3. Late tide pilots had billed emergency hazard rate while logged as regular watch. Senric spoke before the room could turn. Administrative inflation is common during emergency rerouting. Staff compile estimates before final reconciliation. Cordelia looked at him. You turned uncertainty into fees. His eyes cooled. You mistake accounting delay for fraud. No, she said. I mistake nothing. I am watching the same hands that cut my warning count money from the route it protected. A dock worker near the arch whispered her name. Cordelia did not look back. Vaelen turned to the missing station pages. Who received her original notes? The custody log showed 3 clerks. 2 copied tide levels. 1 copied worker observations. The receiving mark after that belonged to Senric's contract office. Senric lifted a brow. Contract staff compile supporting documents for route planning. That does not mean they altered them. The contract justification packet opened next. Cordelia saw her own words before anyone read them. Fragments of her missing pages had been copied into the packet. Southern flow unstable. Convoy hesitation likely. Additional routing needed. But the lines about sweet rot, lower current bloom, and gill distress were absent. Cordelia's voice went quiet. You did not fear my warning because it was false. You feared it because it was early. Vaelen looked at the pages as if they were cutting him slowly. He had learned to follow the paperwork. He had not yet restored the woman whose work filled it. I will not thank you for opening a record, Cordelia said to him, while my hands are still forbidden from the tide. His mouth tightened. No, he said, you should not. No apology. No reach. Only the cost of hearing her and not being forgiven for it. Vaelen turned to the recorder. Cordelia Brine's temporary standing is expanded to convoy logs, contract records, and note custody. Her channel access remains suspended until contamination boundaries are established. Senric bowed. A careful order. Cordelia did not answer. The final renewal parchment was brought forward last. It bore 3 seals: Treasury, Harbor Office, and Northwater Authority. The recorder read the outer clauses in a steady voice. Then he reached the narrow line written beneath the activation date. His voice faltered. Vaelen's eyes sharpened. Read it. The recorder obeyed. Northwater exclusivity activates upon 3rd Southern refusal, provided the Southern Channel remains officially uncontaminated through renewal date. The renewal clause did not prove who poisoned the Southern Channel. It proved Prophet needed the channel clean on paper. That difference mattered, and Cordelia Brine held onto it because too many powerful men survived by turning difference into escape. The parchment lay open beneath witness weights. Northwater exclusivity activates upon 3rd Southern refusal, provided the Southern Channel remains officially uncontaminated through renewal date. Senric Vael looked almost saddened by the court's reaction. Conditional language is standard in trade renewal. If the Southern Channel were legally contaminated, emergency movement would fall under quarantine authority, not Northwater service. The clause protects routing order. It does not prove deception. Cordelia stood with her salt-cracked hands folded before her. Officially, clean is not the same as safe. You have said that already, Senric replied. And your contract keeps proving why I needed to. Vaelen Orm did not speak at once. That was new. Usually silence gathered around him because others feared his answer. Now it gathered because he feared what his answer would admit. Outside the court arches, the Dawn Merrow convoy drifted beyond the harbor mouth. 3 silver sea dragons circled in broken formation, refusing the southern turn. One dragged its gill fin against the foam as if trying to scrape sickness from itself. A dock boy whispered, "They won't come in." Senric turned sharply. "No dock rumors inside court." Cordelia looked at the boy. "He's not a rumor. He is watching the water." The boy flushed and lowered his eyes. Vaelen saw it. A child corrected for seeing what sealed reports had missed. Something in the Dragon King's expression hardened inward. "Bring my tide approval register," he said. Senric's eyes flickered. "Majesty, the register carrying my acceptance of the sealed harbor reports." The court shifted. Even the treasurer looked up too quickly. Cordelia stared at Vaelen. He had opened Senric's records. Now he was opening his own. Not his heart. Not yet. His authority. The register arrived in a long case of dark motherwood. Its pages bore Vaelen's tide crown mark at the bottom of every monthly report. Southern Channel. Clean. Salt balance. Stable. Convoy hesitation. Attributed to weather and rumor. Vaelen read the page bearing his own seal. Cordelia did not pity him. Pity could become another way women were asked to make men's guilt comfortable. Senric spoke carefully. "Majesty, the Crown relies on certified officers. No ruler can personally test every tide layer." "No," Vaelen said, "but a ruler can decide whose knowledge counts." The words made Cordelia's chest tighten despite herself. She did not look away. Vaelen turned to the recorder. "Enter this. The Crown accepted balcony. Layer reports, while lower, current warnings from Cordelia Brine were excluded from final review." Senric stepped forward. "That phrasing will weaken confidence in every harbor certification. It should weaken confidence in bad ones." A sound passed through the court. Not approval. Shock. Vaelen set his seal knife beside the register. Until inquiry ends, no ship is forced through North Water, under exclusivity claim. Fees already collected after the third refusal are frozen under Treasury custody. Senric's composure thinned. Majesty, that will breach contract. Then the contract can stand in court beside the water. Cordelia felt the dockhands behind her breathe. Vaelen continued. Summon the North Water pilots. Seal fee ledgers. Collect Dragon Lantern payrolls. Any emergency costs not matched to actual service are held for return. The treasurer bowed fast. Yes, Majesty. Senric's voice softened again, the way it had softened around Cordelia's hands. You risk punishing an entire route for a suspicion born from uncertified method and frightened captains. Cordelia answered before Vaelen could. You did not fear uncertified method when my notes helped justify rerouting money. Senric looked at her. Fragments of observations may support planning without validating every conclusion. Then stop using my handwriting in pieces. Valen's hand tightened once over the approval register. His eyes found her hands. The old memory rose between them without permission. His bleeding wrist, her basin, his voice telling her those hands knew the sea better than his counsel. Cordelia saw him remember. She hated that it still hurt. You knew my hands before your court called them unclean, she said. Valen's face changed. He did not reach for her. He did not ask her to forgive him. He only turned back to the court. Strike the word unclean from all interim notices concerning Cordelia Brine's person. Senric's head lifted. Her basin and channel access remain restricted? Yes, Vaelen said. The word cut Cordelia more cleanly than it should have. Vaelen looked at her as if he knew it. Her methods remain under inquiry, he said. Her hands are not evidence of contamination. Cordelia's voice came quiet. You remove one insult and leave the door locked. Yes, he said, because I used open doors too carelessly before I knew what was under them. It was not enough, but it was the first sentence that did not ask her to carry his mercy. A horn sounded again from the southern pier, sharper this time. A harbor runner stumbled inside. Majesty, one of the Dawn Marrow dragons shed gill scale at the outer rope. The convoy refuses Northwater too. Senric stiffened. Impossible. Cordelia turned toward the sea. If Northwater had been safe, the dragons would have taken it. Valen's gaze moved from the frozen fee ledgers to the harbor mouth. Why? Refuse Northwater? He asked. Cordelia's mouth went dry. Because sickness follows current, she said, not contracts. The runner held out a wet evidence tray. Inside lay a silver gill scale, veined with grey bloom, and wrapped around it was a strip of Cordelia's missing station page. The strip of Cordelia's missing station page was not proof by itself. It was wet paper around a wounded dragon scale. That was all. And still, Moonbrine Harbor Court stared at it, as if the sea had carried back a piece of her throat. Cordelia did not reach for the tray. Her hands stayed at her sides, salt-cracked and steady, because she had learned long ago that poor women were safest when they let witnesses touch evidence first. Vaelen Orm looked at the page strip. Seal it. The healer sealed the gill scale. The recorder sealed the paper. The ink master leaned close and compared the torn edge against Cordelia's station book. Same paper stock, he said. Same blue salt fiber, likely from the missing week. Senric Vael's expression did not change. Likely is not certain. Dock paper circulates everywhere. Cordelia looked at him. My station pages did not circulate until your office took them. A low sound moved through the dock workers. Vaelen turned to the runner. Where was the scale found? Outer rope between Southern Mouth and North Water Bend, Majesty. Cordelia's breath caught. Not because she was surprised, because she had feared that current since the first sweet smell touched her dawn water. Show me the tide map, she said. Senric lifted his head. She remained suspended from channel access. I asked for a map, Duke, not permission to drown. Valen's mouth tightened, but he said, give her the map. The southern current map was spread beneath glass weights. Cordelia did not touch it. She looked at the lower bends, the mooring stones, the channel shelf where sea dragons turned their gills before entering harbor. Then she pointed. There. Vaelen followed her finger. The waste gate? The harbor office calls it a cleansing outlet. Senric answered smoothly. Pearl wash discharge. Licensed. It clears algae from channel stone. Cordelia's eyes stayed on the map. It clears surface green. It feeds lower rot. The alchemist leaned in. What kind of discharge? Crushed pearl lime, sweet kelp binder, and silver ash, Cordelia said. Harmless if scattered wide, dangerous if released low and slow into a warm undercurrent. Senric's voice sharpened slightly. You are not an alchemist. No, she said. I am the woman who kneels where your alchemists pour. Vaelen looked at the alchemist. The old man did not like what his silence admitted. In theory, such a mixture could trigger bloom if trapped under salt layers. In theory, Senric said. Cordelia turned to him. In tide. The word cut cleaner than an accusation. Vaelen ordered the pearl-wash discharge records brought. While they waited, the Dawn Merrow convoy held outside the mouth like a silver wound. Sea dragons circled farther now, restless, refusing both Southern Channel and North Water Bend. One dragon kept lifting its head above foam, gills flaring black-gray before it sank again. A young salt worker whispered, They are leaving. Cordelia closed her eyes once. Not to pray, to count. The old salt rhythm lived under her skin. 9 turns at ebb, 3 at slack, white salt under the basin lip, black salt at the channel crack, bitterweed ash only when the water smelled sweet. She had done it for years before dawn, not because anyone paid her, but because the first time she stopped, the sea dragons refused the harbor for 4 days. No report had recorded that. No king had asked why the dragons came back. The discharge ledger arrived. It showed pearl wash releases every 7th tide for routine algae clearing. Then, 2 months ago, the schedule changed. Every 3rd tide, then every 2nd, then nightly. Cordelia stared at the numbers. There, she said quietly. Vaelen looked at her. What? You ask why the dragons did not abandon the harbor sooner? I did not ask. No, you did not. The words struck him visibly. She went on before he could answer. Because I held the lower current with salt rites. My basin was not a superstition. It was the only record the tide answered before your office cut mine apart. Senric's voice cooled. You admit to unauthorized intervention in Royal Channel chemistry. Cordelia faced him fully. I admit I kept your damage from reaching the dragon's lungs as fast as it wanted to. The court went silent. Vaelen looked at her, as if seeing the dawn years behind her at once. The barefoot walks, the cracked hands, the salt burns. The basin water he had praised when it helped him, and doubted when it contradicted his duke. You did this for years, he said. She did not soften, and you believed one polished ledger over the hands that carried the proof. He had no defense for that. Good. The alchemist compared the gill scale residue to the pearl wash entry formula. Sweet kelp binder, lime trace, silver ash, present on the scale. Senric answered at once. Pearl wash residue on a channel scale is expected near a cleansing outlet. Expected does not prove poisoning, intent, or manipulation. Vaelen's gaze hardened. Who authorized nightly discharge? The recorder read the column. Harbor Maintenance Office. Senric's face remained calm. My staff may increase cleansing during bloom season. Who approved the increase? The recorder lowered his eyes. Deputy Seal under Harbor Duke authority. Cordelia's missing page strip was open beneath glass. Her handwriting appeared in broken lines. Sweet rot worsens after low outlet release. Do not clean lower stone with pearl wash until dragons clear. Do not send convoys through southern mouth at slack. Vaelen read the torn words. The court read them. Senric did too. It is still her conclusion, he said. Not Crown certified. Cordelia looked at him. You keep saying that as if the sea waited for a seal before choking. Outside, a sea dragon cried. Not loudly. Worse. A low, hollow sound rolled through Moonbrine Harbor, and every ship bell answered without being touched. The Dawn Merrow convoy began to turn away. Vaelen stepped toward Cordelia, stopped himself, and looked instead at the map. What stops it? He asked. She held his gaze. The rites you suspended. He went still. The whole court seemed to understand at once. Cordelia Brine had not been trying to claim the harbor. She had been holding it together. The runner at the arch shouted, Majesty, the lead sea dragon is leaving the royal water. Senric's voice came calm and cold beside the evidence board. If Mistress Brine's rights are the only remedy, he said, then perhaps the harbor's danger is not my officer's discharge, but the kingdom's dependence on an unlicensed woman. Senric's sentence gave the court exactly what frightened people always wanted. Someone smaller to blame for a danger larger than them. If the harbor depends on unlicensed rites, he said, voice calm enough to sound merciful, then the danger is not merely chemical, it is administrative. Mistress Brine has made herself indispensable outside law. Cordelia looked toward the harbor mouth. The Dawn Marrow convoy had begun to turn, slow and terrible. 3 sea dragons moved beyond the royal buoys, their silver bodies breaking the waves like blades withdrawing from a wound. One looked back once, gills darkened, then followed the others toward open water. A sound left the dockworkers, not a shout, a grief. Vaelen Orm stood beneath the court arches with the tide map still open before him. The sea wind pulled at his dark robes. For the first time since Cordelia had known him, the Dragon King looked less like a man commanding the harbor, and more like a man discovering the harbor, had only obeyed because unseen hands begged it to. He turned to her. Can the rites stop them from leaving? Cordelia did not answer quickly. That mattered. The court watched her, suddenly needing the hands it had laughed at. Senric watched too, but differently. Cordelia could feel the shape of his trap. If she refused, she was selfish. If she obeyed, she proved his claim that the harbor depended on an unlicensed woman who could be controlled, used, and blamed again. My rights were never meant to hide your discharge forever, she said. They slowed sickness. They did not cure greed. Senric's brows lifted. You admit concealment. I admit labor. She turned from the sea to face him. My hands are not clean because they avoided work. They are clean because work taught them what poison feels like. The dockhands lowered their heads. Vaelen did not. His eyes stayed on her hands, and pain moved there before he shut it down. Tell me what is required, he said. No. The word was quiet. It still crossed the court like a thrown stone. Vaelen went still. Cordelia lifted her chin. You do not get to ask what my hands can do while your order still says they are unsafe to touch royal water. Senric stepped smoothly into the silence. Majesty, royal necessity permits temporary compulsion when harbor survival is at stake. Cordelia looked at him. There it is. You call me dirty until you need me. Then you call me necessary. Vaelen's face hardened. No one compels her hands. A murmur ran through the court. Cordelia looked at him then. The sentence protected her body. It did not restore her dignity. She would not confuse the two. You can forbid force, she said. That does not undo permission you gave them to laugh. His jaw tightened. I know. The words were not apology. Good. An apology would have been too small for a harbor losing dragons. A harbor runner came in from the lower pier, soaked to the bone. Majesty, 2 salt barges have stopped unloading. Crews say the lower ropes burn their palms. The fishers are pulling nets from the southern shelf. Senric's expression sharpened. Panic again? Cordelia turned on him. Rope burns before rumor reaches rope. The alchemist looked toward the water. If the pearlwash discharge is feeding lower bloom, every rope dragged through that current may carry residue. Vaelen moved at once. Suspend all pearlwash releases. Seal the cleansing outlet. Pull crews from the southern shelf. Senric bowed his head. A drastic interruption to harbor maintenance. A living harbor can survive dirty stone, Vaelen said. It cannot survive dead dragons. Cordelia felt the words strike through her. He was acting now. Too late. Still acting. Vaelen turned to the recorder. Cordelia Brine's temporary standing expands to emergency tide consultation. Cordelia's mouth hardened. No. The recorder froze. Vaelen looked at her. You will not put a prettier title on the same cage, she said. I will not be temporary, unlicensed, suspended, and responsible all at once. Senric's voice softened. Mistress Brine, refusing official status during emergency may appear vindictive. She smiled then, only a little. It did not reach her eyes. Good. Let the court learn the difference between a woman's dignity and a service delay. Vaelen's hand tightened around the map weight. What are you choosing? He asked. My station. Your station is under inquiry. My station existed before your inquiry noticed the tide. She stepped away from the basin, away from the evidence table, away from the throne canopy where men had turned her cracked hands into spectacle. The small sea dragon inside the sea dragon basin lifted its head. It did not follow her. It did not choose her. It only trembled in water that still carried sickness. Cordelia looked back once. Stop the discharge. Open every lower current record. Bring the missing pages. Pay the dock workers before asking them to touch poisoned rope. Then ask the sea what it will allow. Vaelen's voice dropped. And you? I am done begging to be believed. She turned toward the lower salt steps. No guard stopped her. No one dared. Behind her, the court bells rang again, not for royal judgment, but because the harbor mouth had gone quiet. Too quiet. The Dawn Merrow convoy had crossed beyond the last royal marker, and for the first time in 20 years, no sea dragon remained inside Moonbrine Harbor. Without sea dragons, Moonbrine Harbor sounded wrong. No deep fin bells rolled beneath the docks. No silverbacks disturbed the outer foam. The royal mooring ropes hung slack, dripping grey water onto stones polished by centuries of trade and worship. By dawn, ships had stopped unloading. By mid-morning, dock workers refused the southern shelf. By noon, the council began to fear Cordelia Brine's absence more than it had ever feared her hands. Vaelen Orm stood in the open court, while the harbor lost money by the breath. Cenric Vale arrived with 3 ministers and a face shaped for public sorrow. Majesty, the harbor requires unity. If Mistress Brine is permitted to dictate terms from the lower salt steps, every licensed office will appear subordinate to unregistered practice. Vaelen looked toward the empty water. The licensed offices led us here, under incomplete information, because complete information was cut. Cenric bowed his head, graceful as ever. Allegedly cut. Under inquiry. Vaelen did not let him take the room back. Seal the pearl wash outlet, he ordered. No release until lower. Current testing clears it. Open the discharge books, maintenance orders, and deputy seals under witness custody. The minister stiffened. Vaelen continued. Dock workers touching southern ropes receive hazard pay before work resumes. No crew is compelled to handle contaminated line. Northwater exclusivity remains suspended. Cenric's voice lowered. You are dismantling harbor order, on the word of a suspended salt worker. No, Vaelen said. I am dismantling the part of harbor order that needed her silence. The words did not heal Cordelia. She was not there to receive them. That made them better. A king's correction mattered most when the wounded woman was not standing close enough to be used as proof of his virtue. The lower current records came first. They were ugly in the way honest water often was. Tide depth, sediment drag, bloom trace, rope burn complaints, dragon, gill hesitation. Half had been marked unofficial. A third had never reached the royal register. Several carried Cordelia's station marks in the margins. Vaelen read them in public. Every page cost him. Not because reading was difficult, because each line proved he had trusted height over depth. When the first hazard pay chest arrived, a dockmaster hesitated. Majesty, treasury approval usually follows confirmed contamination. Vaelen turned. Their palms burned before our law admitted why. Pay them. The chest opened. Coins struck the counting tray. Dock workers stared as if money for pain were a foreign language. Then Vaelen took the old interim notice from the court board. Cordelia Brine's Basin practice under suspicion. Unlicensed hand contact may compromise harbor water. His jaw tightened. With his own seal knife, he cut away the second line. A minister whispered, Majesty, that alters the public record. Yes. He wrote beneath it, hand labor is not contamination evidence. Cordelia heard about it from a salt girl named Mira, who ran down the wet steps with breathless eyes and bare feet. He wrote it himself, Mira said, in front of Cenric. Cordelia was sitting outside her lower station, where her basin hooks hung empty and her salt jars stood sealed. She had not lit the dawn salts. She had not touched royal water. She had only washed dock rope burns with plain rain and clean cloth. Did he return the channel? Cordelia asked. Mira's excitement faltered. No. Then he has begun, not finished. The girl looked embarrassed. Cordelia softened only for her. Do not mistake the first honest line for the whole tide. Near evening, Vaelen came to the lower salt steps. Alone, except for one recorder and 2 sealed ledgers. He stopped before the station threshold and did not cross it. Cordelia stood inside, sleeves rolled, hands white with dry salt. For a moment, neither spoke. The sea moved behind them, restless and dragonless. Vaelen placed the ledgers on the outer stone. Discharge books, fee payrolls, lower, current complaints, witness, Copies. You brought records to a woman still forbidden from the water. Yes. Why? Because the records used your work without giving you standing. I will not use your rights the same way. Her throat tightened despite her will. She hated him a little for making restraint more painful than cruelty. He looked at her hands and then away, as if denying himself even the comfort of grief. I'm not here to ask you to fix what we broke. Good. I'm here to show you what has been opened. She stepped closer but did not touch the ledgers. Your court laughed at these hands. I know. You praised them when they washed your blood unseen. His eyes darkened. I remember. You doubted them when they contradicted your duke. Yes. And now, the harbor wants them, because dragons are gone. His voice was low. I will not compel them. Cordelia looked past him to the empty mooring bells. Compulsion is not the only way powerful men take from women. The answer struck him still. He accepted it. No defense. The recorder opened the first ledger at Vaelen's command. Missing station extracts appear in the contract renewal packet and discharge adjustment file. Cordelia's breath thinned. Read the adjustment. The recorder swallowed. Pearl wash release increased to maintain visual clarity of Southern Channel during renewal review. Visual clarity, she said. Vaelen's face hardened. Surface appearance. Cordelia looked at the sea. A clean-looking death. The second page bore a lower notation, smaller and darker. The recorder read it once, then went pale. Vaelen's voice cut through the surf. Read it aloud. The recorder obeyed. If lower current bloom becomes visible at surface, suspend Cordelia Brine's station access before public alarm spreads. Cordelia did not look at Vaelen when the recorder finished. If lower current bloom becomes visible at surface, suspend Cordelia Brine's station access before public alarm spreads. The sentence lay between them on the wet stone. Black ink on official paper, ugly because it did not shout. It had the quiet confidence of men who expected their instructions to become law before the women named in them ever heard the words. Vaelen's face had gone still. Senric Vale was not present at the lower salt steps, and that made the notation more dangerous, not less. It meant his office could injure from a distance. It meant a woman could be removed before she knew she had become inconvenient. Cordelia finally looked at Vaelen. You did not close my station because I was wrong, she said. Your harbor prepared to close it because I was early. His voice was low. Yes. The word cost him. It did not repay her. The sea below the steps made a thin grey sound against the stone. No dragon answered it. No fin disturbed the harbor mouth. The emptiness of Moonbrine felt larger than any court. The recorder shifted. Mistress Brine, the king has opened the records. Cordelia turned to him. Do not dress the wound before it is cleaned. The young man lowered his eyes. Vaelen did not correct her. Good. Cordelia stepped to the threshold of her station. Her salt jars waited in rows. White reef salt, black understone salt, bitter kelp ash, crushed shell lime, all sealed because the law had made her hands useless while the harbor sickened. I will not enter royal water under temporary standing, she said. Vaelen lifted his head. Name the condition. No temporary witness. No unlicensed helper. No suspended woman carrying emergency labor so the court can survive one more mistake. She untied the blue cord from her station book and wrapped it around her wrist. If I touch the tide, it is as lower current master under public record, with salt, workers named as harbor witnesses. The recorder looked terrified. Vaelen did not. Granted, he said. Cordelia's eyes sharpened. Do not grant it like mercy. He absorbed that without flinching. Recorded, he corrected, because the evidence requires it. That was better. Still not enough. Dock workers with rope burns are paid before the rite begins. Already ordered. Paid, she said. Not promised. Vaelen turned to the recorder. Bring the pay marks. The sealed tray came from the court chest. Names, coins, thumb marks, burn notes. Cordelia read them all before she touched one jar. A salt girl whispered, Mistress, the dragons are past the outer reef. I know. Her hands did not shake. That was what the court had never understood. Pain could live inside steadiness. Fear could stand upright. A woman did not need to fall apart to prove she had been wounded. Vaelen stood outside the station line. Cordelia noticed. You may come closer for the map, she said. Not for me. I understand. No, she said. You are beginning to. He accepted the correction. Cordelia lifted the sea dragon basin from its witness stand, with the healer and alchemist on either side. The basin was heavier than it looked, old blue stone veined with salt-white lines. The small water dragon inside it had thinned to a coiled shimmer, tired from sick water and caught air. Cordelia set it on the lower step where Tidewash could breathe against the rim. "This is not judgment," she said to the recorder. "Write that." He wrote quickly. "The basin answers salt, current, residue, and sickness. It does not name guilt." The alchemist nodded. "Confirmed." Cordelia took 4 samples: balcony water, lower current water, mooring rope rinse, and discharge shelf mud. Each was sealed, marked, and opened under witness. Then she added 1 grain of black understone salt from her own cracked palm. Vaelen watched her hand. She saw him watching. "Do not mourn them now," she said. His jaw tightened. "I was remembering who I let shame them." Her throat closed for half a breath. She turned away before memory could weaken her. Then, remember quietly. The basin water rose. Not into a dragon this time. Into lines. Thin silver currents lifted from the bowl and stretched across the air above the steps, forming a trembling map of Moonbrine Harbor. The court, the southern mouth, the north water bend, the outer reef, the pearl wash outlet all appeared in waterlight. Then the grey bloom showed itself. It moved low, hidden beneath clean surface roots. It slid from the pearl wash outlet into the southern shelf, curled under the mooring stones, then bent toward north water, where the tide should have thinned it but did not. Cordelia's eyes narrowed. "Again," she said. The basin trembled. She added mooring residue. The grey path darkened. The alchemist whispered, "It is not only the southern channel." Cordelia added discharge mud. A second line appeared beneath the first, deeper and older, feeding from a narrow sluice that did not appear on the public harbor map. Vaelen stepped closer to the waterlight. "What is that?" Cordelia looked at the hidden line, then at the contract ledgers, then at the empty harbor where dragons had left royal water because men preferred clean reports to dirty truth. "A private lower sluice," she said. The recorder's voice shook. "Registered to whom?" Cordelia did not answer. The basin did. Not with words. With a small ring of waterlight around, the hidden mark stamped at the sluice mouth. Vale Northwater. Holding. The hidden sluice did not speak with Senric Vale's voice. It only carried his housemark beneath the water. That was enough to bring the ledgers out. Senric stood very still, while the waterlight map trembled above the lower salt steps. The mark of Vale Northwater Holding glowed at the secret sluice mouth, a private cut beneath public current, feeding sickness into the lower bend while official reports praised clean surface tide. "A holding mark is not an order," Senric said. "Old channels remain registered to founding houses long after maintenance passes to harbor offices." Cordelia looked at him. "Then the maintenance records should be eager to leave your name." Vaelen Orm turned to the recorder. "Bring lower sluice permits, maintenance payments, discharge authorizations, and North Water profit distributions." The court had gathered behind them now. Ministers, dock workers, salt girls, convoy clerks, pilots, healers, and the same polished people who had laughed at Cordelia's hands. No one laughed now. The harbor was too quiet. No dragon bells sounded from the moorings. No royal ship dared cast off. The records came under witness seal. One permit showed the sluice inactive. The next showed private maintenance resumed 2 months before the first refusal. The discharge authorization listed pearl wash overflow redirected through the lower cut. The payment ledger named Vale Northwater Holding as service receiver. Senric's mouth tightened. Administrative routing. The harbor needed emergency cleansing capacity. The treasurer read the profit column. Northwater emergency fees rose after every southern refusal. Inspection costs were inflated. Dragon Lantern crews were underpaid. Private distributions increased through Vale-linked accounts. The pattern no longer looked ugly. It looked designed. Cordelia did not smile. Victory, when it finally came near women who had suffered publicly, did not feel like triumph first. It felt like the body waiting to learn whether the room would deny the truth again. Vaelen faced Senric. "You kept the southern channel officially clean on paper so North Water exclusivity could activate while the lower current sickened." Senric's voice remained controlled. "I protected trade while uncertified fear threatened collapse." Cordelia stepped forward. "You protected fees." His eyes turned to her. Cold now. finished pretending mercy. And you protected a harbor without license, without law, without crown oversight. Do not wrap yourself in salt and call it purity. Cordelia lifted her cracked hands. My hands are not clean because they avoided work. They are clean because work taught them what poison feels like. The words moved through the dock workers like a tide turning. Vaelen took the public notice board himself. Not the recorder. Not a minister. Him. He read the first notice aloud, the one that had shamed her before all of Moonbrine. Unlicensed hand contact may compromise harbor water. His voice did not falter, and that made it worse. Then he looked at the court. I let this stand, he said. I let Harbor Duke Cenric Vael mock the hands I had once trusted in private. I trusted balcony reports over the woman who knew the lower tide. I suspended Cordelia Brine before I examined the water beneath my own harbor. Cordelia felt the words enter the place where humiliation had been stored. They did not erase it. They named it. Vaelen cut the old notice down and placed it beneath the evidence tray. Record the correction. Cordelia Brine did not contaminate royal water. Her basin practice identified sickness hidden below official surface testing. Her station notes were used, cut, and diverted into contract justification without full warning. Her hands are evidence of labor, not dirt. A sound broke from one of the salt girls. A sob, quickly swallowed. Cordelia's throat tightened. Cenric spoke sharply. Majesty, you are allowing emotion to rewrite harbor law. No, Vaelen said. I am allowing evidence to end the law that let your office choose which layer of water counted. He turned to the ministers. From this hour, no harbor report is valid without lower current sampling, mooring residue checks, and salt worker witness marks. Balcony, only certification is abolished. All route fees collected under the North Water Emergency Clause are frozen for restitution. Cenric's face went pale at last. Not from guilt, from loss. Vaelen looked at the guards. Harbor Duke Cenric Vael is stripped of route authority pending tribunal for concealed discharge routing, altered report custody, fee inflation, and endangerment of dragon passage. The guards moved. Cenric did not struggle. Men like him trusted paper until paper turned and held them still. Cordelia turned back to the Sea Dragon Basin. Now, she said, we clean what your court wanted me to hide. Not alone. That mattered. Salt workers stepped forward with her. Dockhands brought clean rope. The alchemist measured neutral ash. Healers marked gill residue. Vaelen stood outside the station line until Cordelia looked at him. You may carry the water, she said, not command it. He bowed his head. Yes. Together, under Cordelia's direction, they opened the safe outer flow, sealed the pearl wash outlet, and fed black understone salt through the old basin lip. The Sea Dragon Basin rose into a silver map one final time, showing the gray bloom thinning, not vanishing, but loosening from the lower current. Hours passed. The first sea dragon returned at dusk. It did not kneel. It did not crown her. It swam to the lower salt steps, lifted its enormous head from the water, and rested its wounded gill against the basin rim where Cordelia's hands had worked. The court watched in silence. Cordelia placed one palm near the dragon, not on the wound. The dragon breathed. Clear water rolled through its gills. The harbor bells answered from beneath the tide. Vaelen stood behind her, far enough not to claim the moment. Cordelia, he said softly, your basin authority is restored by public law. Your station answers to no harbor duke. Salt workers hold witness standing equal to crown readers. She looked at the sea, not him. Before romance, before anything I want. That was the first answer that did not ask her to give. She turned then. I will not be made queen because a king feels guilty. I know. I will not have my hands softened into court beauty. I know that too. And if I let you stand beside me one day, it will be because I choose the man, not because the harbor needs the king. Vaelen's eyes darkened with something like devotion held on a chain. Then I will spend my life making sure choice remains yours. Cordelia looked at her salt-cracked hands. For the first time, the court looked with her. Not at dirt. At proof. At labor. At the hands that had kept dragons from leaving until men made the water too sick to forgive. Cordelia dipped her fingers into the basin. The sea dragon lowered its head. And Moonbrine Harbor, at last, learned to praise the woman before it praised the ships that came home.